The following program speaks about sex education. This serves as an educational material and some information or language can be offensive or disturbing to others. Viewer discretion is advised.
Magandang araw sa inyong mga ginuot, magagandang dilag. Maraming salamat at bumalik kayo sa aming podcast na nangangalang Ignorance is Not a Bliss, Sex Education. Ako nga pala si Daniela Carongoy, ang tagapagsalita ngayong episode na to. Ngayon, tatalakayin natin yung iba't ibang opinyon ng mga membro ng ating lipunan dito sa Pilipinas. Kasama dyan ang mga kabataan, ang mga nurses, at ng isang magulang. Patungkol sa pag-iimplementa ng sex education dito sa Pilipinas. Ang unang papakinggan natin na magsasalita ay isang estudyante ng medtech, isang medtech student. Ngayon ay siya ay magsasalita na.
As a medtech, I know how important it is to understand how the body functions, and I think teenagers need access to that kind of education to better understand their own body and to satisfy their curiosity without having to have sex. And that is why I am in favor of sex education being implemented here in the Philippines, because teenagers need to know in detail what happens during and after sex. Telling them don't have sex or prohibiting them from being close with the opposite sex proves to be ineffective, because we all have sexual urges. And pair that with curiosity, teenage sex is bound to happen. We have to stop treating sex like it's a taboo, because it happens, it is a normal human activity. Besides, with or without sex education, people will keep on doing it. So why not just inform them about it so that even if they do it, they will be equipped with the adequate information.
Narinig na natin ang kanyang opinion na isang medtech student. Nakakatuwa na tama siya na lahat tayo ay may sexual urges at normal to sa pagiging tao. At normal to sa pagiging tao natin. Ngayon naman papakinggan natin yung opinion na isa pang membro ng ating kabataan. Ngayon ay siya ay magsasalita na.
So, yun nga, ang question ay, ano ang stand mo sa sex education? So, for me, yung stand ko sa sex education kasi is, I support it, but to an extent, I guess, siguro naman may mga discretion yung sex education na yan, yung subject na yan. So, I really stand by it, lalo na sa panahon ngayon na ang daming, yun nga, misinformation, and then also lalo na pandemic ngayon at nasa bahay ang karamihan ng mga yun nga magjojowa na, lalo na pag malapit-lapit lang yung jowa sa isa't isa, is they are more eager to explore sa age nila, lalo na mga teenagers. And then kung agree ba ako na ma-implement to sa PH, yes, of course, because ang dami nang tinanggal na supposed subjects, diba, like Filipino, which is an essential part of being a Pinoy. And then, we have here a new subject nga, sex education is also an essential part of being a human per se. So, kailangan to para maging aware tayo and how to control our urges. And if ever explore nga, since teenagers are bound to explore things talaga with their bodies, yung proper implementation of exploration, like yun nga, safe sex and such. And then awareness din sa mga diseases that comes with STD, like that. And then, do you think na ma-help ma-lessen yung overpopulation and teenage pregnancy and STD? I guess, yes, of course. I know naman may capability naman na maging na matuto ang mga students, lalo na pagdating sa mga ganitong mga bagay, since I know they are naive yet sa mga situation na ganyan, na mga topics na ganyan, pero they should understand it as young as possible, yung mga high school age. Kasi yun nga yung time na sobrang rampant. So, yes, I really agree na makakatulong ito sa overpopulation, I think, yes. And lalo na dun sa mga STD kasi nga itong STD is one of the worst case scenario na mangyayari talaga sa mga nagpa-practice ng unsafe sex. And I think it's really better to teach students the proper way to safe sex, and then of course make them aware of those STD para ma-lessen and to prevent eventually teenage pregnancy would lessen. I really think it would lessen with the implementation of the sex education. Yun lang. Thank you.
Ayun nga, nakakatuwa na marinig yung kanilang opinyon ng mga kabataan kasi hindi nagkakalayo ang paningin namin, kaming mga tagapagsalita na si Ant at saka ako, nung pinag-usapan namin 'to, yung nagtanungan kami about sa kanya-kanyang, opinyon nung episode 2 namin kung kayo ay nanggaling dun or narinig niyo yun. Kung hindi pa, puwede niyo po balikan ang aming episode 2. Um, Ngayon naman papakinggan natin yung opinyon ng isang magulang patungkol sa usapang sex education.
Hi, I'm Ronnie Carongoy. I was a parent. Well, my opinion for the sex education here in the Philippines, I'm not really sure if it is really being implemented in schools. Unlike on other countries like the United States, they really provide step by step for the sex education for the students. Now in the Philippines, what I can say is I think they only provide just general information. They don't provide the most important thing about having early sex education from like a teenagers that can be prevented. What I can say is they can improve more teachings about sex education for the teenagers to know the right way and the safe sex here in the Philippines. That's all.
Narinig natin yung opinyon ng isang magulang about sa topic na sex education. Nakakatuwa na nakikita rin ng isang magulang ang difference ng pagpo-provide ng ating government ng sex education kumpara sa Estados Unidos na mas maayos nila nabibigay sa kanilang mga estudyante patungkol sa topic na sex. Ngayon naman, ang magsasalita ay ang dalawang nurses. Una, siya muna ang magsasalita.
Question number 1. What is your stand on sex education? Sex education, for me, if properly and effectively implemented, can only give the Philippines benefits. I support the implementation of sex education in the country because it is no secret that more young people are now engaging in sexual activities. Without existing knowledge or access to accurate information on sexuality, the young generation is at risk of financial, physical, emotional, and even social difficulties. Moving on to the second question, do I agree that sex education should be implemented in the Philippines? That's another yes. In fact, we already have sex education currently. The Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health Act, or RH Law of 2012, has allowed for the integration of sex education into the Philippine education curriculum for students aged 10 to 19. I think one of the elements of the law is education and counseling on sexuality and reproductive health, especially for adolescents. However, as it always is in the Philippines, the problem happens in the implementation phase. The Department of Education, because maybe they're still feeling burdened with the implementation of the new K-12 curriculum, They have obviously given priority to the curriculum and materials development, and they considered other things like sex ed as an afterthought. So, if I can rephrase the question, should the implementation of sex education in the Philippines be reviewed and strengthened? Then again, my answer is yes. The younger generation should be equipped with everything necessary to make informed decisions about their sexuality. Third question, do I think sex education can help lessen overpopulation, teenage pregnancy, and STDs in the Philippines? My answer on all three would be a yes. Maybe we could start with overpopulation. To my knowledge, although our numbers are increasing, overall, the population growth rate in the Philippines has been decreasing in the most recent years. But again, urban sprawl has been consistently on the rise. So, with proper and effective sex education implementation, there is hope that population, especially in urban areas, will become more controlled, thus contributing to the overall statistics of the country. On teenage pregnancy, this is another definite yes. I think this is actually one of the root issues that brought about the RH law of 2012. Just imagine being 10 years old and giving birth to your first child. There is nothing right about that scenario. So, once more, if the law is properly and effectively implemented, these unfortunate cases can be lessened, if not totally eradicated. Lastly, on STDs, yes, it will be lessened, although honestly, I think this will be one of the lesser concerns, but that would be an offshoot of proper and effective implementation of sex education. If people have the knowledge, the stigma on sex will be minimized and people will become more responsible with their sexual choices. That's it.
Nakakatuwa pakinggan ang opinyon ng isang nurse, ng isang professional na nurse. Natalakay niya yung pinag-usapan natin sa episode 1 na about sa RH Law of 2012 na meron na nga na-implementa dito sa Pilipinas at kailangan na lang i-improve pa. At nakikita ko na tama talaga ang kanyang paningin na dapat natin i-improve dito sa ating bansa. Ngayon naman magsasalita ang isa pang nurse at siya ay magbibigay ng kanyang opinion patungkol sa pag-implementa ng sex education dito sa Pilipinas.
What is my stand on sex education? I believe that sex education is very important. It should start as early as grade school. It could prevent things such as teenage pregnancy, STDs. It teaches kids how to keep themselves safe, especially those who don't really emphasize on consent. Otherwise, you get things like I mentioned, like teenage pregnancy and STDs. Should sex education be implemented in the Philippines? Why or why not? I believe it is absolutely necessary. I consider lack of sex education a violation of children's rights. Sexuality and related topics is a part of human life and the human society, as well as a very important topic for kids who are going through puberty and experiencing new things happening to their body and their mind. And I believe that they should receive correct information about all of this. Question is, do you think it will help lessen overpopulation, teenage pregnancy, and STDs if we implement sex education in the Philippines? Why or why not? Really, it could lead to all kinds of problems to not have sex education. I feel like people should need to know what STDs are, what consent means, how you get pregnant, and maybe more importantly, how to not get pregnant. I feel like it can help lessen overpopulation, teenage pregnancy, and STDs if we do implement sex education.
Ayun na nga, narinig na natin ang iba't ibang opinyon ng ating mga miyembro ng ating lipunan, ng mga kabataan, ng mga nurses, at ng isang magulang. nakakatuwa na may iba't iba silang opinion patungkol sa sex education at nagbigay sila ng kanya-kanyang alam patungkol sa topic na yun. At ngayon, nagwawakas ng episode na to sa Ignorance is Not a Bliss. Ako nga pala muli si Daniela Carongoy, ang tagapagsalita nyo ngayon. At sana ay bumalik kayo sa aming episode 4 kung saan tatalakayin namin ang iba't ibang programa na maaaring maimplementa sa Pilipinas upang matugunan ang problemang patungkol sa sex education dito. Pag-implementa ng sex education dito. Salamat!